Let's put our hands together for Shane as he comes to bring the word tonight.
Thank you. All right. It's so good to be here with you. If you're type, let's following an actual Bible. We're going to start in the book of Luke. And I was in a lift coming up here earlier, and I saw a sign that for your church that said the month of April is the month of the cross. So you guys are going to be examining the cross. So I'm going to speak into that. I'm going to do so in my own unique way. I want to talk to you about the cross and Jesus, and because these things are not something we should simply believe in. These things should be something that happened that fundamentally shift the way we see all other happenings after that. And so I want to talk to you about what this means for our life and how we're going to do this. Now, afterwards, my table is set up there at the back. Robin's here, and she'll be back there helping everybody. CDs, DVDs, USBs, direct downloads. Every package now has its own individual USB as well, so you have it in all the formats. If you're new to this, 100% of our profit we give away to the poor and the afflicted. We have 3 orphanages in China that look after children with mental disabilities, 2 in Hinyang, 1 in Changsha. We also have a rescue home in Cape Town that gets girls out of sex trafficking, off drugs, high school educated, and job trained so we could break the cycle of poverty in the Cape Town flats. The reason we do that is because we live with a conviction that we're not simply called to go to heaven when we die. We're called to bring heaven to every place we see hell here, and so that's how we do it. Now, the only thing I would ask is if you know after this is over, I'm not getting anything. God bless you. I'll see you next time I'm through. I try to come through Surf City once a year and make it like a regular thing because Justin's my friend and the people here have become friends and actually all the kids pastors conferences and stuff like that gets held here. So I've actually preached here in this building more than I've actually preached for the church. But we try to come through once a year for Surf City, and so I look forward to that journey over and over and over again. So if you know you're not going to get anything, God bless you. I'll see you next time. It's probably either already worked out or being worked out, all right? And it will happen. But if you know, hey, before I leave here tonight, I want to get his new stuff, or I want to get something, or I want to get his stuff on the cross. There's 26 different messages back there that don't overlap on the cross and resurrection, all right? So there's 26 of those. I just came out in the last 3 weeks with 2 brand new packages of stuff. One has 7 in it, one has 5 in it, and so you could pick those up. So if you know you're going to get something, all I'd ask is that you buy first and chat second afterwards, because Robin's not paid to be here. And so I want to treat her how I would want to be treated. And so I don't want her having to stand here for 45 minutes if we could do it in 10. Okay, is that okay? We could treat Robin because it's an hour and 20 minutes back to where she lives. It's just, it's just a whole thing. So you can help us all by doing that. I've got to go back to Brisbane and catch a plane tomorrow to Melbourne, and then I'm back up here and preaching in Redcliffe Monday and Tuesday, and then I'm way up north for Easter. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. All right, so the cross and resurrection is not something that we should believe in. The cross and resurrection, especially for people who come to church on a Thursday night. I'm not concerned with whether you're saved. I'm assuming you are. I'm not concerned with whether Jesus is your Savior. I'm just assuming we're all past that. I'm assuming, not that that's not important, but I'm assuming that that was a part of our journey a long time ago, right? So I'm not trying to get you to believe in the cross and resurrection, because that would just be, me pounding something that's already solid. I want to go past that. The cross and resurrection is not something that we should believe in. The cross and resurrection is something that happened that should fundamentally shape the way we see all other happenings. And so what I want to do is I want to open up one part of the story, just one part, and I want to dig as far down into it as I possibly can, and then ask us, what does this mean for us? Because when you read the scripture, you got to first ask what happened. So the first part of this is going to be what happened. But the more important question is what is happening in me right now because of it, all right? So I've organized this tonight like a Bible study because it's Thursday night, you're in church. I'm feeling zero pressure to be an evangelist, right? And that's good because I'm not a good evangelist, all right? So if you could bring that first slide up. This is, I think, Luke 21. This is Jesus' trial. Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. By the way, that would have been 30 people or something, right? They arrested him in the middle of the night while everyone was asleep. I have stood on the place where Jesus' trial took place. It would easily fit on this stage. Easily. It was in Caiaphas' back courtyard. It's like in someone's back porch, all right? So when the whole assembly is 20 people, 30 people. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man subverting our nation. He opposes the payment of taxes to Caesar, and he claims to be Messiah." Oh, by the way, in our world, that's a king. All right, so I want to go through this kind of slowly. I want you to notice that they do not accuse Jesus of sinfulness. Why? Pilate wouldn't have cared. What business is it of Pilate's whether he's a sinner or not? They don't accuse him of blasphemy. Why? Pilate wouldn't have cared. Why does he care if he's offended this God of yours? What difference does that make? When they bring him to Pilate, they accuse him of treason. Somebody is rallying people up, and he opposes the payment of taxes to Caesar, and he's using a word that's not familiar to you. He's saying Messiah. And Pilate, we know you don't know what that means, but when somebody in our world says Messiah, what they mean is a king where the government is going to be on his shoulders. The idea of a Jewish Messiah has nothing to do with going to heaven when we die. The idea of a Jewish Messiah in their world was somebody is going to establish a kingdom here to replace the oppressive empire that we're living under. It was about something happening on the earth. And so what they do is they say, "Hey, Pilate, this guy right now, I'm telling you, he is opposing the payment of taxes to Caesar. He's subverting the nation, and he's claiming to be his own kind of king." Now, this is going to get Pilate's attention. Now, Pilate's pretty clever. He's a judge. He's a governor, so he says. So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And I love Jesus' response. "You've said so." In other words, I'm in your world, bro. I am whatever you say I am. I love that. I love that. Like, you make the call. If you say I'm a king, then I'm a king. I am in your world. You're in charge of this. Now watch what happens when he says that to Pilate. Keep going. Then Pilate announced to the chief priest and the crowd, "I don't find a basis for a charge against him." In other words, I've seen people oppressing and standing up against the empire, and this is not what they look like. Normally they're marching and burning stuff, and they've got a whole crowd behind them. This guy's like, "I am whatever you say I am." Like, this guy's so comfortable in his own skin, he's not bothered by whatever I call him. This is not what revolutionaries normally look like. I don't see a basis to charge this guy. Like whatever you think about the Bible, this is not Pilate proclaiming Jesus sinless, okay? We could get that from other places, as if Pilate's the expert on what sinful behavior is. This is Pilate going, "You're accusing him of political upheaval. He doesn't seem to be politically upheavaling things," right? And then they make a second case. But they insisted. He stirs up people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee, and he come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. And notice, Pilate's so unfamiliar with Jesus, he's not even sure where he's from. It's not like Pilate was just looking for a way to get Jesus. He'd probably never even heard of him at this point. He says, "Oh, is he a Galilean? Really?" Because that changes things. So watch what happens. Next slide. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. That's Luke 23, 1-7. Now, let's dig deep into this. Let's look down underneath. Let's look at the stories underneath the stories. Because when I read that, I got a lot of questions. There's things that don't make sense that we need to sort of explore. So let's look at that. Next slide. So if Jesus' main message was to believe in him in order to go to heaven when you die, why kill him for that? Like, if his whole message was, pray a prayer, accept me in your heart, so that you could go somewhere else when you die, is that actually worth killing a man over? Like, right? Like, isn't that more like, "Oh, you're sort of nuts, aren't you cute?" Like, "Oh, bless your heart," right? But let's kill him for that? No, come on. No. If Jesus' main message was that, why kill him? Let's ask a second question. If Jesus' main message was to take care of the poor, then why kill him? Like, if his whole message was, when you see people who have needs and you have the power to meet those needs, make sure you meet the needs. Why would you kill a man for that? Like, what about that is so irksome that we're going to hurt him now? What is that? What's going on? Let's ask a third question. Why not just kill him yourself? You arrested him in the middle of the night. Why would you have Rome do your dirty work? Was there not some sort of back alley Jews that for a price would take care of my brother, right? Could you not lure him behind like a little alleyway and have, the Guido brothers take care of him, right? Why do you need Pilate to do your dirty work in the middle of the night? If you were that upset with him, why couldn't you just pay people off? You already paid 30 pieces of silver for Judas to betray him to Rome. Why wouldn't you just pay the same 30 pieces of silver and have surely someone would have beat him to death for 30 pieces of silver somewhere. Why do you need Pilate to do your dirty work? And the answer to that is quite easy. It's because Jesus was very popular. Like, they had to arrest him in the middle of the night and crucify him at 8 a.m. so that by the time everybody got up from Passover the night before, he was already on the cross and the thing was beyond hope. He was already gone. So they need that. Let's ask a fourth question. I've got all these questions about this passage. Why are Herod and Pilate in Jerusalem? They both lived in Caesarea. Why is Pilate diverting to Herod? Why is he going, well, if he's a Galilean, we got to get Herod's input here. What's going on here? Why is Pilate even in Jerusalem when he had a mansion in Caesarea? Why would he come and live in like a hotel quarters when he had a mansion in Caesarea on the Mediterranean Sea? Why would he come and live where the slaves are living when he had a better place in Caesarea? And why was Herod there when Herod is not even in charge of the region? He's in charge of Galilee. Why is that going on? And so, as with most things in the Bible, there's normally a history story underneath the story that makes the story make more sense. And I want to tell that one to you tonight, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what? This is a while back. I was preaching for a liturgical church, right? And every single person was taking notes, but I promise you, I had no idea they were even in the room. I was working hard. Here, you take notes, and you go, woohoo, and you let me know that you're with me. I like that. Now, to understand what's going on here, next slide, we got to understand the rule of Rome. So, I'm going to take my time with this a bit, because there's no reason for me to shout it when we could just teach it, okay? So, this story actually starts with a guy named Julius Caesar. Now, Julius Caesar successfully combined the whole world under one rule, and he invented the salad. Yes, this guy was quite busy. Now, the propaganda on Julius Caesar was that he was not only man, he was fully God in flesh. As a matter of fact, the Roman poet Virgil said that in Julius Caesar was the fullness of God incarnate, and in no other name on earth by which men can be saved other than the name of Caesar. Caesar said he was God in flesh. They purported that he was God in flesh, and all kinds of horrendous things was happening in the names of being like God, because if Julius Caesar is God and you want to be like God, then you need to behave like him, and that's a whole nother thing. Now, in 42 BC, Julius Caesar got murdered by his best friend by stabbing him in the back. The guy's name was Brutus. Now, this sort of hurt his God claims. The idea is that if you were actually God in flesh, you shouldn't be stabbed in the back. That stands to reason. If you're God, you should have seen that coming, right? Here's what happened. At Julius Caesar's funeral, this is a historical fact. At Julius Caesar's funeral, the historians wrote that a strange star appeared in the sky that was so big and so bright, it lit up the day and night sky in Rome for 7 days. Now, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but astronomers have confirmed this, and they've named it. What they thought was a strange star shooting across the sky slowly was actually a comet, and it came so close to Earth that it lit up the day and the night sky, not quite for 7 days, but nonetheless a big enough astronomical event to get noticed. Astronomers have named that comet now Caesar's Comet. There was a rock song in the 70s about it. Oh, it's a Caesar's Comet, right? It's that. So here's what happened. Now think about this. Pretend for a second that you're an ancient primitive person who's never seen a telescope, doesn't know anything about science. You think the earth is still flat. You think the gods live up in the sky somewhere and determine whether we get rain. And this guy who said he was God in flesh, when he dies, it just so happens coincidentally, at his funeral, a comet comes to earth and lights up the day and night sky. If you're a primitive person, what might you think? You might think that that strange star in the sky proves that this guy is God, right? And now he is taking his seat amongst the council of the gods. So, Roman historians confirmed Caesar's divinity through a strange star appearing in the sky. Is this sounding familiar at all around Christmas? Now, Julius Caesar's great-nephew was adopted. His name was Octavius. He took over the empire and took on the name Caesar Augustus. He capitalized on this by saying, "See, this proves that my father was God." Okay, not his father. It was his great-uncle who adopted him. Nonetheless, fair enough. "See, my father is God, therefore I am the Son of God. And if I'm the Son of God, then I should be worshiped. And if I'm the Son of God, I should be worshiped primarily." So, Caesar Augustus instituted a 12-day celebration of his birth. It lasted from December 19th to December 31st every year, and he called that celebration Advent. It was called the Advent of Caesar Augustus. They changed the calendar, the New Year's Day, to coincide with Caesar Augustus's birth on the first day of Christmas. Right? This is where this stuff comes from. Now, how do you get word from Spain to India that you are God in flesh, and you are the new Son of God, and as the new Son of God, you should be worshipped? How do you get that word around? There's no internet, no social media, no news, no town criers are pretty unreliable, no printing press. What do? Here's what they did. They printed their government bulletins on money, because money would go around the empire, and you would see the new messages. So let me just show you this. Oh, there you go. This first coin, this right here. You don't need a degree to see that says Caesar. Here's my trusty pointer. That says Caesar Augustus right there. That's the image of Caesar Augustus. And on this side, you have a giant star, right? It's like saying, hey, a giant star in the sky has confirmed that I'm the Son of God. Now, around that star, this says God, this says saves. So on the Caesar Augustus star coin, it says Caesar Augustus, God saves, around a star. Hey, remember, there's this one time that they were trying to trick Jesus into admitting treason, and they say, "What do you say we do about tributes to Caesar?" Remember? And they've got like a first-century private investigator in the reeds with a first-century video camera recording the whole thing, right? And Jesus says, "Tributes to Caesar, huh? I need a coin. Somebody give me a coin," right? And so he's patting his pockets. And so somebody there is trying to trick him. He says, I have a coin. So they hand Jesus this coin. And remember what he says? He says, "Whose image is on the coin?" And they say, "Caesar's." Then that coin. Caesar's image is on the coin. He says, "Oh, right. Then you better keep Caesar's what is Caesar's. And you better give to God what is God's." In other words, they're Jews, right? What's the second command? Don't have idols. In other words, Jesus is like, you're trying to trap me, but you're the one carrying the image of a guy around that says he's God. You're breaking something far more different. Like you can give to Caesar what Caesar's, but keep God's what's God's. In other words, in the kingdoms of Caesar, he put his image on money. He put his image on money, and he treated people's lives as commodities, right? In the kingdoms of this Christ, he put his image on people, and money was commodity. It's an entirely different way of seeing the world. So, Caesar Augustus awarded a guy named Herod the Great rulership over Israel. Here's why. Herod the Great supported Julius Caesar in a civil war against him and Pompey. Julius Caesar won, and they awarded Herod the Great with the rulership of Israel. Herod the Great was a lunatic. He drowned his own children in his front yard, in the pool in their front yard, because he had a dream that one of them was going to try to take over the kingdom. So he took them swimming and drowned them. They were 8, 9, and 11, okay? This guy was a maniac, absolute maniac. He dies in 4 BC. So he dies in 4 BC, and what Caesar does is he splits Israel into 3 sections. This is going to be important in a second. So he splits Israel into 3 sections. The southern section, called Judea, was given to Herod's son Archelaus. What they figured is that if you survived Herod being your dad, you're a pretty strong guy, right? So Herod's son Archelaus was given the south. Herod Antipas, his other son, was given Galilee. And then his son Philip was given the north. This is why in the north there's the city Caesarea Philippi, literally a city built by Philip for Caesar. I mean, these guys were brown nosers to the T, right? So you had Philip in the north, Herod Antipas in the Galilean region, and Archelaus in the south. Now, Archelaus made a right mess of things, and they had to remove him in 22 AD. 22 AD, Caesar Tiberius removed Archelaus for making a mess of the south, and he replaced Archelaus with a guy named Pilate. Yes, this Pilate. So, when Pilate figures out that he's a Galilean, he has a judicial problem. Judicially, he's standing in Jerusalem, which is under Pilate's authority, but in his residence, he's from Galilee, which is under Herod's authority, and he doesn't want to have too much conflict with Herod, so he has to get him involved. So this is what's going on in this thing, which leads to this question. Why was Pilate and Herod even there? They lived in mansions somewhere else. Here's why. When Tiberius replaced Archelaus with Pilate, here's what he told him. Your whole job in life is to make sure the Jews don't revolt. Make sure they quit rioting. They're given to riots. Make that stop. If you read the scriptures, how obsessed is Pilate with the Jews rioting? Very obsessed. He doesn't really know what to do. The whole thing is, I don't want to hurt him, but if I don't hurt him, they might riot. He's terrified that people might riot. So why are they there? Here's why. This was a season every year that Jews celebrated called Passover. Let me explain Passover in one statement. Every Jew from everywhere that could possibly get to Jerusalem would walk miles to come into Jerusalem to have the biggest meal of the year, drink 4 glasses of wine, and then have a week of singing songs about God's will to deliver them from slave drivers. Whoever is oppressing them, God's will is to deliver us from them. And in this case, who are the slave drivers? Rome. So, if your job is to make sure people don't riot, can you think of an environment more conducive to a riot than 250,000 Jews having 4 glasses of wine and then getting together, singing songs about God's will to deliver them from you? That is an environment conducive to a riot. Let's be honest. If 250,000 people who worship a different God than us gathered in Surfer's Paradise, singing songs about God's will to deliver them from the horrible, oppressive Australians would be nervous about that. That's what's going on. In the Roman Empire, 250,000 Jews getting together, singing songs about God's will to deliver them from you. So who has to come down and keep that under control? Pilate. And here's how he did it. He lived in Caesarea. He had the biggest war horse in the cavalry. He would hook that war horse to a chariot, and he would come into Jerusalem with platoons of Roman soldiers to keep these people, essentially, sing your songs, just know we're in charge. And here's how he did it. He put an eagle on a stick. It's a Roman aquila. Let me show you that. This is a Roman aquila. It's an eagle on a stick. It's a universal symbol of military dominance when a military is in a foreign land dominating you. There might be a military in the world today that puts eagles on top of their flagpoles for their military to show dominance when they're in other countries. I don't know if you could think of one, but no, right? It was also used by the Nazis, but in flag form. If you think about your Hitler images, when the Nazis marched in, with their stuff, they had the flags that were red and black, and they had that eagle on top of the flagpole that was looking sort of like, right? It was that. It's the same. It's that same imagery. I don't know if you remember. This was a few years back. There was a movie called Pompeii that was based on a true story. When the Celtic slave, he smuggled in a Roman aquila to the Colosseum, and they didn't know he had it. How they didn't know, I don't know. And in front of everybody, he pulls out the Roman aquila, and he breaks it over his knee, before he ultimately dies. That was the that was the idea, like, you don't get, like, this is that. So what they would do is Pilate would come into Jerusalem riding a war horse. And when he saw groups of people singing, he would stop his war horse and hold the Roman Aquila over them. And the law said that if he did that, you had to stop your song and acknowledge that the only reason you're allowed to sing is under the authority of Rome, that Rome is still in charge. As a matter of fact, Herod the Great, to appease Caesar, put a 35-foot statue of a Roman eagle over the top of the temple to give testimony that even our God bows to your authority. It's this kind of thing. Now let me stop and talk about us. Is that too unlike us? Like, remove the literalness of it. Let's talk about meaning for a second. How many of us have ever been guilty of singing songs about God's will to deliver us from whatever oppresses us, only to go home and the thoughts of the oppression dominate us more than the truth of God's word, right? Like, how many of us, by the way, worship guys tonight, awesome job, hey. Like a man sitting on a box, creating that kind of atmosphere. I think it's pretty awesome, right? I'm going to sing in the middle of the storm, louder and louder. Let me hear your praise, right? And you're thinking, right? Right? And here's the thing, and legitimately so. In the middle of that song, oh yeah, I raise my hallelujah, right? And we're like, yeah, come on, right? Bring it. But here's the problem, right? We have that experience legitimately, only to go home, and when we put our head on our pillow at night, the thoughts of the depression or the addiction or the rejection or the fear, we know that there's an eagle on our stick going, sing all you want. At the end of the day, you know I'm in charge. This is not just a story about them. This is a story about me, and it's a story about you. And it's a story not just about Jesus wanting to forgive us, but for Jesus wanting to set us free from our eagles on a stick everywhere. Right? So Pilate would come in with his eagle on a stick, and he'd hold that out. It was a symbol of oppression. Next slide. So this is a map of first century Jerusalem. I've never done drugs in my life. Not that I would ever be judged for that here. But as still as you think your hand can be, this tells the story, all right? I'm going to try to hold this still. So Pilate lived, there you go. So Pilate lived up here on the rafter somewhere. And he would get on his war horse, and he would ride it down into Jerusalem. So he'd come this way, and he'd come right through the F there, right? The F's not actually there, right? But he'd come right through the F and come in through the gate because the army barracks were right here. Now, this valley right here was called Gehenna, hell. So when Jesus said hell, he's talking about a rubbish dump that existed literally right there. So Pilate would come down from Caesarea through the F, through hell, into the city this way, riding a war horse. Now, that's really important. So let's say that together with gusto. It goes like this, war horse. All right, let's try that. Ready, go. War horse, all right? So Pilate would come down from Caesarea through the F, through hell, riding a war horse. Now, the same day that Pilate's doing this, there's somebody else coming into the city. His name is Jesus. Now, Jesus, turns out, is coming in from this way, right? Right here's a place called Bethany. Then right there's a place called Bethpage. And then this whole area right here is called the Mount of Olives. Now, the Mount of Olives, there ain't no olives, okay? The Mount of Olives is the largest cemetery you have ever seen in your life, all right? So Jesus would come from Bethany to Bethpage, right through the Mount of Olives, which is the biggest cemetery ever. Now, think about it. What's in a cemetery? Yeah, dead people. Let's go past that. Lots and lots of gravestones, okay? So Jesus is going from Bethany to Bethpage through the dead people, where there are lots of stones. All right, let's try that again. Where there are lots of stones, right? And he comes through Gethsemane into the house of God this way. Let's review. Pilate comes from Caesarea through the F, right through hell, riding a war horse. Jesus comes from Bethany to Bethpage through the Mount of Olives cemetery where there are heaps of stones, riding a donkey. So this is a story about one guy who establishes his kingdom on the back of a war horse and another guy who establishes his on the back of a donkey. Now, let me show you a picture of the Mount of Olives cemetery just to get a picture of it, okay? Next slide. That's the Mount of Olives cemetery. It is the biggest thing you can't fathom how big it is until you're standing there. I'm standing on the gate at Jerusalem taking this picture. That is Malachi's tomb. That is Zechariah's tomb. That right there is Micah's tomb. And all these little things are individual caskets or coffins. They're these stone things because they couldn't bury people. It was too... Oh, by the way, in the first century, they charged people a premium to be buried here. Here's why. They told people that when Messiah returned, he would establish his kingdom from the Mount of Olives, and there'd be a resurrection. So, if you paid a premium to be buried there, then when Messiah returns, you would have the shortest walk into the city. It was very convenient. No. True. Absolutely true. Let me show you a close-up. Next slide. Let me show you a close-up. That would be what each individual one looks like. Like that's a dead person in there with information about them. Dead person information, but it's just unbelievable. If you could go back one again to the big one, yeah, and see where the road is. Right now, that's a paved road with buses. In Jesus' day, that would have just been a gravel thing that, Jesus is riding a donkey down. All right, next slide. So, quick review. Pilate comes from Caesarea, down through the F, through hell, riding a war horse. Jesus comes from Bethany to Bethpage through the Mount of Olives cemetery where there are heaps of, yes, riding a donkey. Now, with that is the historical background of the story. Are you guys bored? Okay, good. Let's see if that makes the story make more sense. All right, next slide. This is Luke 21. Each day Jesus was teaching at the temple, and each evening he went out to spend the night on the Mount of Olives. Well, it's just right there. That makes sense. And honestly, if you want some alone time, there's no better way to do it than to camp out between gravestones, right? Where's Jesus? It's nighttime. He's sleeping between the tombs. We'll let him be, right? Right? There's no better way. That is just awesome. And all the people came early in the morning to hear him at the temple. He would just come by. All right, check this out. Next slide. This is Matthew's version. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethpage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of me, and at once you'll find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and he'll send them right away." Yep. Now watch what Matthew says. "This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king is coming to you." King? See, your king is coming to you. But wait a minute, the actual king's on a war horse on the other side of town. But watch what Zechariah says. "See, your king is coming to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey." Now, what Matthew's doing here is something in Hebrew called a remez. A remez is a hint or an allusion. It's sort of like this. If Australia made it illegal to have a Bible, own a Bible, read a Bible, or quote a Bible, you can't do that, right? What's the one thing they can't take from you? What's in your memory? Right? And here's the other thing. They don't know whether you're quoting it or not. Right? So here's what the Jews would do. The Jews would do something called remezing. They would quote part of a passage, right? Knowing the other people could complete it in their head, right? So it'd be like if I said, hey, remember, Mommy! If I said to you, hey, remember, for God so loved the world that he... Yeah, but you'd have to do it in your head or you'd die, right? So for God so loved the world that he, gave his only begotten son, right? Hey, remember, we all know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, right? So that's a remez. So Matthew's doing something to the Jewish audience here. He's saying, hey, Jesus is coming in on a donkey. Hey, remember what the prophet said? See, Israel, your king is coming to you on a donkey, gentle on the foal of a donkey. He's doing a remez, but that's not the whole prophecy. He's quoting something from Zechariah. Let me show you the whole prophecy. Next slide. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king is coming to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. That's the part Matthew quotes. Here's what everybody would have been thinking in their head. And I will take away the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem. And the battle bow will be broken, and he will proclaim peace to the nations, and his rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Woo-wee. Can you see why Matthew left that off? Right? He's like, you know. Hey, when you see your king coming in on a donkey from the Mount of Olives, that means there's a war horse somewhere, and it's the beginning of the end of the war horse. It's the beginning of the end. And that's the truth in history. Like 2,000 years later, we're still establishing Jesus' kingdom, but the guy on the war horse has been dead. And actually, no one would even know his name if it wasn't for the guy on the donkey, right? The people who build their lives on the back of a donkey always have longer influence than the people who build their lives on top of a war horse. It's just the truth, right? Now, this fills people with, what would it be called? Hope. This fills people with excitement. This guy's coming in on a donkey. The war horse is there, but the prophecy said when the guy comes in on a donkey, that's the beginning of the end of the war horse. And they would start singing songs. This fits right into Passover. God's will to deliver us from the war. Hey, let's sing about this. And they start singing songs. Now, why is that dangerous? Because if the guy on the war horse hears your song about a new king, everyone's going to die. They nail people to sticks for this, okay? And so smart people start going, hold the song back for a week, please. Let's have some wisdom here, right? Watch what happens. Next slide. When he came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, I showed you that. The whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices. Of course, right? They're going to sing about this. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory to God. By the way, that was Roman propaganda. They said that Caesar would bring peace through victory. Peace through victory, that peace through victory. No other name on earth by which men can be saved other than the name of Caesar. They're using that same language about Jesus. They're going, no. Peace in heaven and glory to God in the highest. And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, Rabbi, rebuke your disciples. Yes, of course, you can't be doing this while the Romans are right there. Watch what Jesus says. I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, then the stones will cry out. Where was Jesus standing? In the Mount of Olives cemetery. What's in a cemetery? Stones. Right. This is not about, you better keep your praise on. You better get that praise on, or that street might start praising God. You quit praising God, that street will start singing, which is at best creepy, right? That is just weird. Like, what are you talking about? This is not about that. This is about a guy in the middle of a cemetery going, it is my time, and either you're with me or you're not. But if you're not, we'll have a resurrection right here. You choose. You choose. You could be with me, or we'll have a bad episode of The Walking Dead, because rumor has it they like me. Rumor has it I preach to the dead. Rumor has it they'll be with me, so you choose. You're with me or a bad episode of The Walking Dead. What would you, if you be quiet, then these stones will cry out. Well, that would have been warning enough for people to go, okay, we'll sing, and right? Right? We don't want that, right? Right? This, next slide. So, Pilate comes from Caesarea, through the F, through hell, riding a war horse. Jesus comes from Bethany to Bethpage, through the Mount of Olives cemetery, where there are heaps of, yes, through Gethsemane, riding a donkey. Now, you might be thinking, Shane, decent history lesson, mildly entertaining. I think I understand the passage a little better than before, or at least a little different, right? So what? Honestly, 2019. What's this mean? Well, for a church that's exploring the meanings of the cross for the entire month of April, I thought this would help, right? But I don't want you to believe any of this literally happened, although I do. Let me say it another way. I don't want you just to believe it all happened. I want us to explore the meanings of this and then ultimately change the way we see our whole world, right? So let's explore that. So what do we do with this? Next slide. Why was Jesus killed? Let's talk about that first. Jesus was killed because Jesus confronted people who were controlling the temple and working with Pilate in order to use people's spiritual guilt to live in mansions. And you can't confront corrupt systems of spiritual and political power without dying. They're going to kill you. So what do we do with this? Next slide. There are two ways to build your life. Anything you want to do in life, there's two ways to do it. You could do it as a ruling empire or a humble servant. There's two ways to be a husband. You can rule. I'm the head of this house. Of course, if you have to tell people you're in charge, you're likely not in charge. You're the head, she's the neck. She's just turning you any way she wants, right? There's two ways you could be a husband. You can rule your house, or you can get up underneath people and serve everybody in it and make them better. There's two ways to be a wife. You can rule, or you can serve. You can get up underneath your family and make all of their lives better, or you can treat them in such a way that they secretly pray for a comet to bring them sweet relief from you, right? There's two ways. Hey, there's two ways to order your food at a restaurant. Oh, yeah. That person is paid to serve me, or you're there to make their life better. You drove a motor car on a paved road to a store that's going to prepackage food for you and still abuse the waiter? Think about your life. To go get in a car with a cross? What? No. Hey, there's two ways to order food at a restaurant. Oh, yeah. Hey, there's two ways to treat people in busy Surfers Paradise traffic when they cut you off. Yeah, hey. There's two ways to treat someone who's taking a little longer than you think they should to turn right at an intersection when they're not from here and they're trying to decide, do I turn down the road or down the tram line, because one could be very destructive to me. So I'm going to take my time. There's two ways to do that. You can go, oh, that poor man from South Carolina is having trouble with these roads. I understand that. Or you can honk your horn, point your finger at the sky, only for me to see you in the church meeting later. Two ways to build your life. It's two ways. It's two ways. If you've ever had the unfortunate thing of traveling north of the Gateway Bridge between 3 and 6 o'clock, only to realize that they'll never fix that road. No, they're never going to finish it. Just get it inside your soul. It will never be done. There's two ways to treat people. When you're driving through roadworks, I got to drive all the way back to Brisbane tonight. The Vegas over-under on running into roadworks is almost a certainty. It's almost certainty. And it's almost certain that at some point I'm going to have to slow down to 40, and when I look around, no one's working. Right? It's almost a dead certainty. I'm slowed down to 40, and there's someone holding a lollipop thing, and no one else is working. Right? How am I going to treat those people when I go by? What thoughts am I going to have? How am I going to treat? There's two ways to build your life. You can rule or you can serve. Let's say it this way. There's two ways to build your life: as an oppressor or as a liberator. You can allow your actions or lack of actions to oppress the world, or you can actively and intentionally be a part of liberating the world. Maybe we could say it this way. There's two ways to build your life: from the gates of hell or from the house of God. There's two ways to do it. One guy in the story came in through hell. One guy in this story comes in through the house of God. Here's my question. As a husband, are you bringing hell to your household? Are you bringing the presence of God? As a wife, are you bringing hell? Are you giving them hell? Or are you bringing the presence of God, compassion and love and kindness? And hey, as a customer at a restaurant, are you giving them hell? Or are you bringing the presence of God to them? As a passenger in a car, are you giving them hell? Or are you bringing the presence of God to the situation, right? When you're dealing with someone who can't do anything in return for you, are you bringing hell to their world, or are you bringing the presence of God? When someone comes to you and they're at the end of their rope and they've just done heroin, they hope for the last time, and you are the person they come to say, will you please help me get off this life-debilitating thing? Are you going to bring hell to their world, or are you going to bring the presence of God to their world, right? There's two ways to build your life. Maybe the easiest way to remember tonight is this. There's two ways to build your life: on the back of a war horse or on the back of a donkey. You can build your life as a war horse, or you can build your life as a humble, serving donkey. There are two ways to do it. Let's be very specific. Next slide. There are two ways to handle conflict. You can be a war horse. You can think about your argument. You can make them look a fool in front of people. You can attack them from the stage. There are two ways to handle conflict. You could be a war horse, or you can be a donkey. There's two ways to handle it, ma'am, when your husband leaves his underwear on the floor for the 18,000th time. Two ways. You could be a war horse. Pick up your underwear, you stupid idiot. Right? There's always that. But there's always donkey. This would be donkey. Oh. The sweet, handsome, loving, smart, intelligent father of my children has left his nasty underwear on the floor. But you know what? I know that he would gladly die for all of us if an intruder came in tonight. So I'm going to pick those up and just call it even. There's always donkey. Now, you men, pick up your nasty drawers and light a match every now and then. You're disgusting. There's two ways to handle it when your wife falls asleep too early for your liking. You could be a war horse. Get up! I have needs, woman. That always works marvelously. You could always be a donkey. Oh. The sweet, beautiful, sexy, intelligent mother of my children is tired. But you know what? She would stand with me if everybody else left, so I'll call that even and let her rest. There's always donkey. Let's say it this way. There are two ways to deal with tragedy. There's war horse, or there's donkey. There's two ways to run your business. If you're a business owner, there's two ways. My employees will bow my way or the highway. And of course, your employees will find every way they can to chinch you. Or you could treat them in such a way where they would go to hell with gasoline drawers on before they would hurt you, right? You can always come up underneath your employees and find a way to make them better. There's two ways to build your life. There's two ways to be a husband. There's two ways to be a wife. There's two ways to deal with tragedy. There's two ways to deal with conflict. There's two ways to run a business. There is war horse or there is donkey, and the choice is yours. And for followers of Jesus, gone are the days where it's enough to just believe in Jesus so we could go to heaven. That is boring, and the world finds that uncompelling. What the world wants to see is a group of people who allow this event to fundamentally shift the way they see their whole world, and the way they live their life is through donkey. Right? Next one. There are two ways to lead your ministry. War horse. I'm the man of God here. Of course, if you have to tell people you're the man of God, you're likely not the man of God. Because true men of God don't have to tell people. They just come up underneath their congregation and make everybody better. And then no one would leave them. Why would you? There's war horse and there's donkey. There's two ways to raise your family. Two ways to be a parent. War horse. My way or the highway. Or you can treat a 6-year-old like they're 6. Allow them to have fun, grow, change, spill things. You know, sort of have fun and play. Not put too much on them too early. There's war horse or there's donkey. Like if I asked your 6-year-old, if God is like daddy, what is God like? What would your 6-year-old say? If God is like daddy, what is God like? What would your 6-year-old say? And ma'am, if I asked your 6-year-old, if God is like Daddy, what would he say? Mom must think God's an idiot then, right? What? No. What? There's 2 ways to raise your family. There's warhorse or there's donkey. What if I asked your neighbor, if God is like you, if God is like your neighbor, what is God like? What would your neighbor say? What about that? Look, there are 2 ways to deal with disappointment. There are warhorse, there's donkey. There's 2 ways to handle it when things don't go your way. There's warhorse and there's donkey. So I want to stop, and I want us to be meditative. And let's bring these things before the Lord. Let's bring it to the foot of the cross. Not in a way that we believe it, but in a way to allow it to fundamentally shift the way we see our whole world. And let's ask 2 questions between us and God. So in this quiet moment, let's be brave enough to ask God these 2 questions. Holy Spirit, what is my eagle on a stick? What is the thing that dominates me after I sing the song? After I sing the song, what is the thing reminding me that it's still in charge? And I'm asking you to please liberate me from the eagle. Don't just forgive me. Liberate me from the eagle on a stick. I bring that eagle on a stick, and I want it smashed. Second thought. Very simple. Is there any place you've been a warhorse this week? And maybe you could pray a prayer like this. Lord Jesus, would you reveal to my heart any place I've been a warhorse and I didn't realize it? And I want to make that right. If you're sitting next to your spouse and the Lord's revealing to your heart that you've been a warhorse to them, if you're sitting close enough, why don't you just tap their leg, you know? And if you do that, this is you saying, I've been a warhorse. Please forgive me. I'm going to do my best. I'll never be perfect, but I'm going to do my best to be a donkey. And if your spouse just tapped your leg, don't make them explain it later. Don't get into a big thing about it. Just receive that gesture of faith. We're all on a journey to be donkeys. Why don't you just pray a prayer like this underneath your breath? Lord, forgive me for where I've been a warhorse. And would you empower me to live from the back of a donkey? Amen. Would you look this way? Thanks so much for letting me be in your life and for coming out tonight. This actually got very well attended, and I really appreciate it. I know it's Thursday night. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope Jesus got bigger. I hope the cross worked better. I hope the resurrection is central. I hope scriptures got bigger, not smaller. I urge you not to be people who simply believe things like bullet points on pamphlets, but allow these things that happen to fundamentally shift the way you see your whole world. I bless you with a life that is eagle on a stick free. I bless you to be liberated from those voices that dominate you after the song is over. I bless you to be empowered. May you have the courage to see things different and the irresistible urge to respond to what you see. May we be empowered to kill the warhorse in our life and always strive to live from the back of a donkey. I bless you to be people to always, always be the donkey, but never, ever, ever be a jackass. Grace and peace, everybody. Till I see you next time.
And here you can say that without being judged. Amen. Hey, did you enjoy Shane? Can we put our hands together for him again? Thank you so much. I know on the time, I think we've been here now for 3 years, and you've been coming, and it's good. It feels like yourself and even Robin are just part of the family, so we appreciate what you do. Thank you for what you do.